Hello and welcome to Mindshifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Friday, December 10th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are made available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. The book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships and turn any negative emotional state into part of the infallible guidance system that every one of us has been given. We hope you go there because you can also download the actual worksheet itself. It's a simple PDF file. Download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it again and again. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows like this one that have been curated out specifically because they contain either the audio of somebody being stepped through the worksheet process or somebody giving powerful testimonials about how the use of the tools has improved the quality of their life, or some of the more in-depth discussions about the power behind that simple tool. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. When you do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you click on that, it'll let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. If you do that and get loaded up with questions or comments or testimonials and want to share, give us a call, 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1, and it'll put a little icon of a hand by your phone number, and I will announce you by your area code. This year, we're marching through doing the worksheet lessons from A Course in Miracles, the workbook lessons from A Course in Miracles. Today is the 344th day of the year, and today's lesson simply reads, Today I learned the law of love. And that law is that what I give my brother is gifted to me. Commentary reads, This is your law, Creator, not mine. I have not understood what giving means, and I thought to save what I desired for myself alone. And as I looked upon the treasure that I thought I had, I found an empty place where nothing was, or ever will be. Who can share a dream? And what can an illusion offer me? Yet, the person whom I forgive will give me gifts beyond the worth of anything on earth. And in this work, forgive means the person for whom I have removed any false perception. When I see them truly, that seeing will give me gifts beyond anything I can imagine. Let my brothers and sisters, for whom I have dismantled my false perceptions, fill my store with heaven's treasures, which are the only thing that is real. This is the law of love lived fully in the moment. And thus your offspring arises and returns to you, Creator. How near we are to each other as we move toward the source of creation, how near it is to us, closer than our own breath, how close the ending of the dream of sin, and how close the redemption of the offspring of creation. So that's the lesson for today, lesson 344, and my rewording of some of the language to be more in line with what Michael Rice would call regulatory speech. And this is the Course in Miracles experiment with Pam Grout. Lesson 344 is titled, "It's All Present Now." She quotes Christopher Moore, who said, "Children see magic because they look for it." Pam writes, "Preschoolers do not sit in front of a pail of Legos and think, 'Nah, I'm not feeling it today.' They don't worry about ISIS. It never crosses their mind to question their ability to worry what someone else will think. They plunge in, unhindered, free, and happy." My friend Carla tells a wonderful story about her daughter who was dancing with great abandon. A well-meaning adult watching nearby said, "Wow, I'm impressed. Are you going to be a dancer someday?" Carla's daughter stopped, looked her square in the eye, and retorted, "What do you mean? I already am." Lesson 344. Seconds repeats, aligns with Carla's daughter. We already are everything we want to be. Shall we begin? So that's our Course in Miracles workbook lesson and the Pam Grout commentary from Course in Miracles experiment. And we have, as usual, about 50 minutes to have a conversation, to entertain your comments or questions, to discuss the latest Richard Rohr daily meditation. And when I read this one, I kept thinking, so much of our experience of life is shaped by the language we were taught and the language that each one of us has built since learning the raw structure of the language that we were taught. So we load a whole bunch of meanings for every word. And often we don't even realize how many different meanings and how emotionally loaded those meanings are. And the word in this daily meditation that jumped out at me is the word hope. And I've done enough readings of various, let's call them spiritual teachings, philosophies, psychologies, etc. And several of them talk about how, hope really is not useful because hope pulls me out of the present moment. And hope has me in the moment making a qualitative decision and saying, the way things are right now isn't good enough. But this daily meditation from Richard Rohr, titled Hope Beyond Our Lifetimes, as it's read, it speaks to me of an entirely different definition for hope. And it says, this is coming from a theologian and a Carmelite sister. Her name is Constance Fitzgerald. And she identifies hope as a profound freedom, and it's the freedom to accept God or creation and reality just as it is. Richard Rohr notes that she, Constance Fitzgerald, takes a lot of her inspiration from the work of St. John of the Cross. And St. John of the Cross lived from 1542 to 1591. He didn't quite make it 50 years. He writes, this dynamic of being able to yield unconditionally to the creation's future, to God's future, to what actually is, this is what John of the Cross calls hope. To yield unconditionally to whatever unfolds in life. Now that is not the definition of hope that's not like any definition of hope I've ever been introduced to. So, if you read something like this and they talk about hope and you've got a whole bunch of preconceived notions and emotionally loaded definitions for hope, meaning, I hope someday my life will get better. I hope someday my prayers will be answered. I hope someday to have a loving relationship with somebody who's as healthy as I am. I hope. And every one of those hopes is about having things be different than they are now. If you're like me, and that's what every other use of the word hope in your life has been pointing to, this writing from Constance Fitzgerald, based on the work of John of the Cross from the 1500s, this writing turns that upside down. They completely redefine hope as the ability to accept life as it actually is. It's a hope that can even embrace and work for a future without us in it. That's not egocentric in any way, shape, or form. Hope. Not hope that my prayers are answered. Not hope that I end up having the kind of loving relationship I've always wanted with somebody who's as healthy as I am. Not hope that I make $1 million. But the hope that I can live in the moment, fully embracing whatever unfolds. So, how does that strike you? I think I will back off of reading that whole daily meditation, but just put that idea out there. What is your thought about hope? What is it that you do if and when you entertain hope? How do you view hope and still feel yourself in loving acceptance of life as it is? Or is that possible? Are they contradictory? 563-999-3581. Call that number, press 1, and I'll announce you by your area code. How can we entertain you today, be of service today? I believe that we had a false alarm a week or two ago, and I talked about how I would play the Richard Moss interview, and then the person, when I got up that morning that I was supposed to interview, had canceled at 8 in the morning or whatever, 9 in the morning. And so I ended up doing the live show that day. Well, Monday, coming out of this weekend, I intend to play that Dr. Richard Moss interview because I will be otherwise occupied with patients and then an interview immediately after the 11 to 12 o'clock hour. So if you're interested, that will be what the show is on Monday. Dr. Richard Moss was a medical doctor, and he had enough spiritual experiences in his life that he eventually walked away from being a medical doctor practicing, and he worked with people to refine and teach what he'd learned about living in the present moment. And he wrote some books about inside-out healing and the mandala of being and his tools for helping people wake up to what they were doing with their thoughts to pull themselves out of being awake and aware in the present moment. So that interview will be aired in lieu of a live show for the first hour on Monday. And if you were hoping to catch that, you can then have access to it in the archives if you're not able to be here live on Monday. So we've got about 40-some minutes left. We had a support group last night, and in the support group, we listened to the reading of The Way of Mastery, Lesson 5. And it was one more. It was by request because some people that we were entertaining in the group last night were hoping for something that was a little bit more nurturing and nourishing. And so the Way of Mastery Lesson 5 talks about what it takes to be awake and aware and alive in the kingdom. There are the 5 keys to the kingdom. And it's one of the more, I'll say, juicy, meaty lessons from the Way of Mastery, because if one is willing to actively work with it, it actually presents tools. It's actually, they aren't as specific as the reality management worksheet or the worksheet on 3 early memories of conflict or the worksheet on my mind just went blank. Or the worksheet on the responsibility communication, which are just very specific tools that have step-by-step instructions. And yet, this Way of Mastery Lesson 5 is 5 steps, 5 things to pay attention to as what will help me be awake and aware in the moment and step into awareness of my instant, constant, abundant supply, my instant, constant connection to the one mind, the Christ mind, etc., to insight, intuition, miracle-mindedness, whatever you want to call it. And those 5 keys are desire, intention, allowance, surrender, and humility. And we've done, entire shows where this evolved out, and I spent almost the whole time talking about each of the 5 and how they fit together and how the first 4, if I'm practicing the desire, the intention, the allowance, and the surrender, my experience of life will get so much better that if I don't learn to practice humility, if I'm not vigilant about practicing humility in that sense, I'll mess it all up. I'll disrupt the progress I've made. The idea is desire, again, another one of those words that we've got a whole bunch of emotional baggage for. But desire, the way of Mastery is talking about it in Lesson 4, is simply, this is the way I talk about it, it's the energy of creation that wants to express uniquely through you in each new present moment. So this is nothing like obsession, it's nothing like craving, it's nothing like passion. It is this very subtle and ultimately powerful energy that is conveyed by what some traditions call the still small voice, or the great comforter, or the Holy Spirit, or Christ-mindedness. It's the kind of thing that's always there and available, and yet most of us stay so busy and so distracted and so enraged and so consumed with our pains and fears and sadness and our prayers for what we want. And most of us don't practice slowing down, tuning in, and accepting the guidance that's available through that energy of desire. So the invitation in Lesson 5 is start with that. Desire only this. Desire to be aligned with that energy of creation as it wants to express uniquely through you in each moment. The second key is intention. Align yourself, bring your conscious energy moment to moment to focus with the intention to stay aligned with that energy of creation, to stay tuned into that still small voice, to be aligned with or cooperating with whatever word you want to give it, the Christ mind, the Great Comforter, Holy Spirit, your intuition, insight, whatever. So intention is simply this practice of bringing myself back to present moment awareness and aligning myself with that quiet inner voice, that connection to the divine that each one of us is given, etc. The third key is allowance. And this is almost exactly the same definition of hope that comes in the Richard Rohr meditation today. It is about helping myself get comfortable with and welcoming whatever unfolds in life. Allowance is about having vigilance for the earliest warning signs that I might notice that I am resisting, that I have judgment, that I have tension, that I have frustration, that I have a rejection of the flow of life moment to moment. And the sooner I catch this energy of resistance, choose again, relax it, soften it, breathe into it. The sooner I do that, the less time I spend resisting life, and the more time I spend going in the flow, being in the present moment awareness, having a broader, deeper, clearer view of everything that's going on in the moment. The fourth key to the kingdom is surrender. And that key to the kingdom talks about once I've aligned with the energy of creation as it wants to express uniquely through me in the moment, and I keep my intention focused on that day, moment to moment throughout the day, and I catch the early signs within me that I am resisting, that I am feeling judgment, that I think somehow my conscious logical mind knows better than the flow of life about what's supposed to happen moment to moment. Then the fourth step is that I surrender to the moment, to what's unfolding. I surrender to be taught by the moment. I surrender to be taught by life, be taught by love, to be taught by the Creator, to be taught by the creative energy flow in the moment. Understanding that in truth, as so many of the deep traditions tell us, I really don't know what anything is or is for. I make stuff up, right? I have hallucinations. I've got beliefs about what should be and who should be and how they should be. And so I've got those things, but I don't actually know much of anything. I don't know, and here's the, some exercises in the way of mastery earlier on in lessons say, take some time throughout the day, pick something up, pick up a paperweight or your cell phone or a mug or a pen or a pencil or one of the items you might have on a shelf or a knick-knack. Pick it up, look at it, and honest with yourself, spend a few moments or a few minutes just directly observing that you really don't know what this thing is. You don't know who first had the idea to create a pencil from a hunk of wood or some graphite or a piece of rubber. You don't know when the original idea came from, where it came from, when it was made. You don't know where this pencil was made or how. You don't know where the mug that you're holding in your hand came from, unless, of course, you did the ceramic work yourself and created it from clay and fired it, etc. And as you do that with one thing after another, whether it's an actual body part of yours or it's a possession that you have or a possession someone else has in the room you're sitting in, the more you do that, the more you wake up to the direct observation that, you know what, I don't really know much of anything about this life that's unfolding in, through, as, and around me. And so I'm going to surrender to this moment, to this flow of life, to this energy of creation. I'm going to surrender to it and ask what it's for. Ask to be shown how to be a blessing, how to cooperate with the flow of life. I'm going to ask to be shown how I can be a part, my actions, my presence, how they can be a part of unraveling any harm that exists in the moment that I could be aware of. That's one of the lines from a Pema Chodron book. Instead of talking about, this person did this harm to me or to somebody else and I know it's wrong, but acknowledging, there are people who are upset right now. But rather than looking for blame, let me ask how I might participate in helping that harm, that pain, that hurt, that confusion, how I might participate in helping it unravel itself. Again, the key is I ask to be shown. I don't rely on my conscious logical mind to be figuring it out, because that's a trap. My conscious logical mind isn't smart enough, isn't vast enough, isn't connected to senses that are sensitive enough to actually help me see enough, understand enough, integrate enough to make a difference in the bigger picture. As we talk about so often in this work, the senses that we're given, the five senses that we're given, only pick up a tiny fraction of the sound that's present in any moment, of the light energy that's present in any moment, of the ability to sense various energies, whether they're physical or mental or emotional, whether they're X-rays or radio waves. Our senses don't pick up most of what's happening around us. And then, to make things even more refined, our conscious logical mind only registers a tiny fraction of what our senses are showing us. So our senses can't even begin to touch the magnificence of life unfolding around us, and our conscious logical mind gives us a tiny fraction of what the senses register, and then it wants to tell us that it knows what's going on, when in truth, it doesn't. It's just making guess after guess after guess, and often they are quite far away from the truth in the moment. So, surrender is the next good step once I wake up and realize everything that we just talked about in terms of the limitations of my senses and the limitations of my conscious logical mind to actually be aware of what my senses are registering. So I'm going to surrender. I'm going to surrender to life. I'm going to surrender to love. I'm going to surrender to be shown, to be taught how to be a blessing. I'm going to ask. I'm going to actively work on the process of how did Rilke put it? Learning to live in the question. Most of us do not understand, especially from the Western mind. Most of us do not understand the benefit of developing that willingness to live in the tension of questioning. Most of us from the Western world are taught to ask a question and then dig and push and fight for an answer, and formulate some kind of a definitive answer and grab onto it and be willing to fight to the death to defend it. And Rilke suggests that we learn to live in the question, that that's really the only way to move forward in our lives, because, as he points out, in the moment when a mind can ask a really good question, that same mind is incapable of integrating, processing, understanding the answer to that question. Krista Tippett, in some of the conversations she has with people like John O'Donohue and Michael White, she talks about how a beautiful question helps shape the mind. Well, my questions can't help shape my mind if as soon as I ask a question, I start fighting about what the answer is. Because my craving for or insistence on knowing the answer creates that brutally limiting assessment, that rushing to judgment. So Rilke calls us to learn to live in the question. That's step 4 in the Keys to the Kingdom. That's surrendering to the moment and asking to be taught. What's mine to do here? How will this turn into a blessing? Even though this isn't anything like what I thought the day was going to unfold as or what I wanted, how can I live in the hope that Richard Rohr talks about in the daily meditation for the day? Hope in the sense of being able to willfully accept anything as it unfolds in life. What is, I'm accepting what is, and I ask to be taught by it, rather than insisting that it's good or bad, right or wrong, up or down, it should be there, it shouldn't be there, rather than any of that, in quotes, knowing. I ask to be shown. I open myself to be taught. That's the same as step 4 in the Keys to the Kingdom, surrender. And what the Way of Mastery talks about is that if I do that, if I'm willing to step into the use of these first 4 tools, align with desire, keep my intention focused on it, catch the early warning signs of my resistance to anything that's unfolding in the moment, and then move into that allowance, and then ask to be shown by whatever is unfolding in the moment, and I ask to be taught by it. When I do that, those first 4 steps, my life is going to get so much better that I'm not even going to recognize it. And I'm going to be very, very strongly tempted to think, oh, what a good boy am I. Look what I've done. Look how hard I've worked. Look what I've manifested. Look at how hard I've studied my spiritual lessons. Look at how I'm aligned with the Creator. Look at how loving I am. And that will sink my ship. that will fill me with pride and blind me to the truth of what is. And so the fifth key to the kingdom is humility, is to recognize we're all in this together. Not any single person is better than any other. No one single person created the whole world and knows how it runs. Nobody with a conscious, logical mind understands things at a deep sense any more than anybody else does. And if you have difficulty aligning with that humility in the sense that every one of us is at its core, our core, the same, and the humility from the ancient Aramaic is the ability to look for and see the highest and best in another, and then actively choose to cooperate only with that. And if you have any difficulty doing that, what's recommended in the way of mastery is ask yourself this question: did I create myself? And of course the answer is going to be no. Not only did I not create myself, I don't even know when I was created. I don't know who created me. I don't know how I was created. I don't know when I was created. And when I face that actuality, then I settle back and realize I'm being lived. I'm not living. It's not me driving this bus. Right? I'm not the one breathing. Something is breathing me. I'm not the one deciding when and how fast my heart should beat. It's happening. I don't get to decide which chemicals get secreted when to digest the food that I eat. I don't know how any of that happens. It's not me in the ultimate sense being the creator here. I am both a part of the creation and I have some ability to co-create, to initiate mind energy. It's a very, very limited role that I play. And once I wake up to that and I keep that in mind and I realize that I am just like every other being of brilliance and light, fellow traveler, and I have moments when I'm aware of that consciously and I'm acting in alignment with that awareness, and then what I do is loving and creative and respectful. I also have moments when I'm not aligned with that consciously. I've either temporarily forgotten or I've yet to discover my brilliance. And that's the same as every other being of brilliance and light. And once I wake up to that, then I get to work in alignment with, in conjunction with, everybody else. I am just like everybody else. That's what the humility is calling me to, that I can choose to cooperate with the highest and best in another person once I've realized that we all have access to that, and that's who and what our true nature is, and that there is no one who is higher or better than anyone else. There certainly are people who think they are, but when they start thinking that, they sink their ship. They make it fairly certain that God, light, love, Holy Spirit, the powers that be, whatever, are going to make sure they have less to celebrate in the not-too-distant future. Because every time I move out of alignment with what actually is, I'm going to create more difficulty in my life. And if what actually is the truth that I'm not the ultimate creator and I'm no better than anybody else and nobody else is better than me, and I stay in alignment with that, then the energy can flow and the creative unfolding happens, and I experience it more lovingly and more respectfully and with more of that acceptance, and my life gets better and better and better. But as soon as I try to take responsibility for it, as soon as I try to direct it with my conscious logical mind, as soon as I get full of myself thinking that I am so much better than this, that, or the other person. I sink my own ship. So that's what we did last night. We listened to Lesson 5 from The Way of Mastery. Again, The Way of Mastery is a wonderful book for some of us. I haven't mentioned this in a while, so I'll mention it. It's available, and you can get access to the book without having to buy it. They'd like to have you buy it. It's nice to support the authors and the people that promote it at the Shandy Cristo Foundation. But you can get access to it and either read it online and or listen to it as it was channeled originally. The original recordings are on there at christmind.info. So CHRISTMIND, Christmind, all one word. And instead of .org or .com, it's .info, INFO. So if you want to review Lesson 5, it's available. If you want to make a comment or a question, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1. And you can help us be of service by being specific about what would be of value to you, how to spend the next 15 minutes or so. 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1. How do you align with the definition for hope we were talking about earlier? How do you align with comments about how each and every one of us gives very different meanings and emotional loadings to various words? What are your thoughts on the keys to the kingdom, the 5 keys to the kingdom, and Lesson 5 in Way of Mastery? Or what's another topic that you'd like to help us introduce and spend some time on before we start our second hour today? 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1. We've talked before about the various lessons from Way of Mastery, and some of the titles themselves provoke, I don't know if they provoke, but they lend themselves to active discussion or argument. The second lesson, you create your experience. And it talks in various ways about how everything you experience in this world is your own creation. And that isn't exactly, as Michael Rice was talking about the other day, it's not exactly that you're creating all of the external things. But as the external life events move and flow around you, the interpretation that you choose and place on that event, that person, that thing, that's what creates your experience of life. And Way of Mastery is very, very clear about that. The third lesson is titled The Power of Forgiveness, and it gives a definition for forgiveness that, to my eye and ear, is the very same definition we work with in the Kaboris manuscript and the Course in Miracles. It says, forgive. To forgive means to choose to release another from the perceptions, I'll add the word false perceptions, that you have been projecting upon them, on your mind's image of them. So forgiveness is an act of dismantling your own false projections. And as you begin to dismantle your own false projections, each time you dismantle a false projection in your mind, you take yourself deeper into the purity of your own consciousness. Lesson 6, title that provokes some discussion with people, is Love Heals All Things. And some people say, no, it doesn't. You need a lot more than love. You need government programs and finances, and you need equity, and you need the right leaders in power, etc. Lesson 9 is titled, All Events Are Neutral. And boy, this was a challenge. One day we were going through the way of mastery from start to finish, and we meet on a Tuesday night, and we were meeting on a Tuesday night, and I think it was the 10th and of September. So September 11th is the anniversary of the Twin Towers attack, and so that night, Monday night, we're meeting and we're reading this. It says all events are neutral, and boy, did that stir up some stuff with people, because you can't say that the attack on the Twin Towers is neutral and this, that, and the other thing. So sometimes even the titles of these chapters or lessons stir up the dross, the grist for the mill. The next one that follows right after that usually gets people too, and that is, the way is easy and without effort. So you want to find your way to God? It's easy. There's no effort involved. Well, tell that to somebody who's been on a spiritual path for 30 years and wants to tell you, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows how hard I've had to work to get these tools out here. Tell that person that the way is easy and without effort. There's another lesson, Lesson 15, is titled, Love or Fear. The choice is yours. And that stirs up discussion with people. What do you mean the choice is mine? There's a lot to be fearful for right now. We've got people who are trying to force me to take a vaccination I don't want. We've got people who are unwilling to take a vaccination, and because they're unwilling to take it, I'm in danger. We've got people who are willing to shut down all of my rights. We've got people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot going on. There's global warming. The world's going to burn up. What do you mean? It's a choice to have love or fear. If you're not fearful, you're not paying attention to the real world, is part of what is often said. There's another one that talks about self-honesty. And self-honesty is the greatest act of love. Well, that has provoked quite a few challenging conversations among people over the years. There's a lot more loving things I can think of than to be brutally honest. People like to say, I'm going to be brutally honest. And my experience has been, most of the time when people talk about being brutally honest, they're far more interested in being brutal than they are in being honest. And the fact of the matter is, you can be completely honest and never have to be brutal. Another one, Lesson 21, says, allowance is the doorway to the kingdom. Well, there are all kinds of people that want to argue against that. Just like we were talking about before, nobody wants to hear about surrender. People don't want to hear about allowance. What, I should allow this person to walk all over me? What, I should just allow the other political party to gain power and ruin our rights? What, I should just allow this country to invade our country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So even in looking at the titles of the Way of Mastery, there's plenty here to stir up anything that's less than love that I might be carrying in my system. And blessedly, what we have at whyagain.org is tools that I can use to start dismantling any of that stuff that gets stirred up. The other day we were talking about the idea of the chocolate milk analogy. And you get very cold milk and you pour chocolate syrup in it and it sinks right to the bottom of the glass, and it's just pure white milk with a little bit of sludge at the bottom. But you can pick that glass up and drink that milk and never have that sludge get stirred up. And if you're a person that really likes white milk, you can drink almost every bit of it without having the chocolate or the sludge, whatever, contaminate the milk. But if there's a spoon, and the spoon starts moving and agitating and stirring up the sludge or the chocolate from the bottom, and you don't like the sludge or the chocolate, you'd probably get angry at the spoon. But the spoon had nothing to do with that stuff being in the bottom of the glass. So if you hear something like, all events are neutral, or allowance is the doorway to the kingdom, and you should just relax and allow the flow of life, and you feel yourself getting agitated, you feel resistance, anger, frustration, righteous indignation, that stuff was in you before you heard the words that someone was saying. And it's your gift, it's your opportunity to pick up some tools like the tools at whyagain.org to start dismantling, unloading the boulders from your backpack or the sludge from the bottom of your glass. It can happen. You could pick up these tools and begin applying them consistently, persistently, over time. And if you're like most of the rest of us, when you do that, what you'll notice is your life starts getting better by leaps and bounds. The more you embrace the core of the principles behind these tools, they're exactly the same as the Buddhist principles that Pema Chodron talks about. They're exactly the same as the Way of Mastery. It's exactly the same as the Course in Miracles. And the more you embrace them and start to put them into effect in your life, the better your life experience will be, if you're like most of the rest of us. And what do you got to lose? Your fear, your sadness, your guilt, your shame, your frustration, your low self-esteem, that's the only thing you've got to lose. So the invitation is there. We've got just a few minutes left before we switch over to the second hour. I will remind you again that on Monday I will be playing the Richard Moss interview, and hopefully this time for sure. I will have other activities keeping me busy during that 11 o'clock hour on Monday morning. So it'll be available in the archives. It's currently available. It's been available for quite a while on journeysdream.org/podcast, but we'll play it here and add it to the Mind Shifters archives as well. And we'll expand the... I had somebody recently who was asking me about grief work. They sent me an email, and my practice is currently so busy I can't take any new patients, so I directed them to the MindShiftersAcademy.org website educational materials page, and on that page there's a link to a workshop I did, and I finally got a good recording for it. I've done the workshop for decades, and the workshop is titled Saying Goodbye to Good People Without Saying Goodbye to Good Memories. And that's available absolutely free. It's almost a full 2 hours in 2 separate files. The audio is available. And the PDF file of 3 or 4 pages of categories that are listed out that can be used with that tool to stimulate the processing of reviewing the relationships that we've had that may be shifting to a different format, or they may be ending altogether, whether it's somebody moving away or leaving a job or somebody dying or somebody getting a divorce. And the idea is how to move through a change in a relationship and say goodbye to the person without saying goodbye to the good memories. And it's one of the more powerful tools I have been introduced to in the 47 years I've been doing therapy, and it's available absolutely free with the PDF download and the 2 audio files, and that's on MindShiftersAcademy.org website under Educational Materials tab. So, if you or somebody you know is going through some grief work, might want a little slightly different perspective on that process, please check it out. MindShiftersAcademy.org, Educational Materials tab. So I will say hello to welcome Jeannie Rice. I know your microphone isn't on, but you've typed into the chat room. Welcome, Jeannie Rice. I am
here, and I was just wondering, I was doing some searching, where can I find a list of those lessons that you were just giving the titles of? I think they were lessons out of the Way of Mastery.
Those are the titles of various lessons in the Way of Mastery. So you know, the website reference I gave for it is ChristMind, all one word, ChristMind.info. And they have access to the book and the recordings. You can also go to shanticristo.com to order the book through the foundation. The Shanti Cristo Foundation has the rights for the printed books.
Okay. I've typed that down to put it in the notes, and I will definitely look that up. I don't have a copy of that. So, awesome. I hope you have a fabulous weekend. Now I can say
Thank
that.
You.
It was funny yesterday.
Yep.
Michael also thought it was Friday, so it's like, okay, we're on the same page here.
Yeah. Well, it's one more day, one more show before the weekend, and as I mentioned, I will be playing the Richard Moss interview on Monday. And
okay.
As Bullwinkle used to say, this time for sure. So
awesome. All righty.
So I'll remind us all that we come from love.
Well, you have a good one then.
All right. We're made of love. We are love. Everything else is false. Have a great show.
Thank you. I appreciate you.